And you say this is where your husband...
Yes, he was standing right about here when he dropped on one knee, then fell on his back.
I see. And you can't think of any reason why anyone would want to get rid of your husband?
Oh, really? What a thing to say.
My apologies, Miss Straightford, but foul play is a possibility.
I understand. No, I can't think of anyone who had any harsh feelings for my husband. The doctor said it was a heart attack, and I believe it. He developed a keen taste for sausage while in Germany and paid enormous amounts of money to have a monthly supply shipped over. I never knew one man could eat so much sausage.
So, you believe the cause of death was sausage?
Inspector Peabody, are you mocking me, or do you actually mean to suggest that I had something to do with my husband's demise?
This is all just normal police procedure, madame. When someone of high status, such as your husband, dies so suddenly, it is best to explore all possibilities.
And since you know very well that I was the only person present in the room when my husband died, it is reasonable to presume that any suspicion of foul play would naturally fall upon me.
Well, not necessarily, madame. There are many ways to induce a heart attack, but you can be assured that we will be investigating all of them. And now, I really must be off.
Do keep me apprised.
Naturally.
Miss Ava Thornton. Miss Ava Thornton. Miss Ava Thornton.
Jennings, there's no need to shout. I'm only across the room.
My apologies.
Don't make a habit of it, or we'll all be hard of hearing before long.
I'm not that lucky.
Sit down, Ava. Anna's making up some tea.
I saw a man leaving just as I was coming in.
Oh, yes. It was only a traveling salesman.
Really? Have they no sympathy? Interrupting a woman in mourning to take advantage of her financial situation? The nerve!
Come now, Ava. I'm sure he didn't know about the Colonel's death.
How could he not know? It was the front page of yesterday's newspaper. Have the police come out yet? It's standard procedure, I believe.
Well, actually...
I really am sorry about your husband, Julia. His death was most surprising.
Not all surprises are bad, dear.
Burton Everhart III and Winston Callahan. Winston Callahan the First.
Mr. Everhart, I'm so glad you were able to come. I am Julia Straightford, and this is my dear friend, Ava Thornton.
May I ask, what are you looking for, Mr. Everhart?
Oh, Burton likes to examine the scene of the crime first thing.
I'm sorry, you said scene of the crime. Julia told me her husband died of a heart attack. Isn't that right, Julia?
Yes, that is what I told you.
Oh, no. I clearly remember...
Actually, Mr. Callahan, are you a detective also?
Yes. I graduated from Oxford with a degree in detective sciences. I've traveled for many years.
Excuse me, Mr. Callahan, but my husband is a professor at Oxford, and I can assure you there is no detective sciences department.
Did I say Oxford? Silly mistake. I'm sorry. I meant Oxford. Yes, Oxford. It's a very distinguished university in Brussels. As I said, I traveled with Burton as his
personal assistant.
Personal assistant.
I see.
Mrs. Straightford, your butler is an insomniac.
Why, yes, he is. How in blazes did you know that?
Well, it was quite simple, really. The indentations in the carpet here indicate that a person has been pacing right along this path rather recently. I'd even say last night. The prints are too large to be that of a woman's foot, therefore it must be that of a man's. Indeed, a man wearing elf slippers. In any case, since your husband has been dead all of 2 days now, it must be the only other man that would be in this house at that time of night. Your butler, Jennings.
Well, I must say, that was simply amazing.
Yes, bravo, Mr. Everhart. A fine use of reasoning.
Well, I could have told you that. Footprints, slippers, That's mere child's play. May I announce that I have also deduced, Mrs. Stratford, that your husband was in the military? Do you want to know my reasoning?
It couldn't be the fact that you're investigating the death of a colonel, could it, Mr. Callahan?
Thank you, Anna. That will be all for now.
Yes, Mom.
Please, have some tea.
Why, thank you. Now then, I'm afraid we must discuss a little business.
Is there some suspicion the colonel was murdered?
Oh, Ava, no one thinks he was murdered. It was a simple heart attack.
If I may correct you, Mrs. Stratford, I do suspect your husband was murdered. And I believe you do as well.
Whatever would make you say that?
You hired a private investigator. If all you wanted to know was the cause of death, any mere doctor would have told you. But to determine the reason for death, that is another matter altogether.
It's like poetry. Really, it is.
Anna, what on earth are you doing? Where did that come from?
I thought you might enjoy an after-tea snack.
And just who was this after-tea snack intended for? The entire country of England?
I just thought that...
I don't pay you to think, Anna. I shouldn't even pay you to serve.
But you don't pay, Mom.
As well I shouldn't. If you went family, I swear you would be out of a job. Take this away. I apologize for the help around here. They seem to have lost hope these last couple of days.
That lovely maid. She is part of your family?
A distant cousin, on the colonel's side, of course. Although at times I wish she were much more distant. The colonel agreed to take her in after her parents were involved in a tragic baking accident. After his death, I thought she could be put to use.
You know, but perhaps the colonel wasn't murdered after all. He may have died for fear of being turned into a servant.
Jennings, I'd like to introduce our guests to the rest of the household. Would you please gather the rest of the staff and bring them in?
Of course. Would you like me to fetch Master William as well?
No, there's no need to bother Will with this right now.
Of course, ma'am. Oh, Mr. and Mrs. Redmond.
Oh, Karen, George, thank you for coming.
We are so sorry to hear the news.
Yes, really. It's quite the misfortune.
Yes, you could call it that. I'd like you to meet the world-renowned...
Burton Everhart III! I've heard all about you. The most brilliant man in England. It's wonderful to get to meet you. What dashing adventures you've had.
Well, if you know that much about Burton Everhart, then surely you've heard of his world-famous assistant Winston. Winston Callahan.
Can't say that I have. But I do remember reading, just last month, of how you're in India and had to save that poor fellow. What was his name?
Winston.
Yes, that's it. When you saved him from the... Oh, so you're Winston.
Winston is such a common name. It could have been anybody.
Excuse me, gentlemen, but it's about time we start our little meeting.
May I ask, Mr. Redmond, what brings you here tonight?
Oh, yes, of course. Karen is Julia's sister. After hearing news of the colonel's death, we thought it would be best to stay with Julia for a while, until she got her wits about her again.
Well, there is only one more person we must wait for.
The Honourable Miss Alison Curtis, barrister at law.
I'm not late, am I?
Of course not. You brought the will, didn't you?
Yes, Well, for goodness sake! Where did I put that briefcase? Please excuse me. Yes, I've got it right here.
Good. Then please, sit down. Get everything ready.
Julia, what's going on here?
Last year, my late husband wrote out his final will and testament, but wouldn't let anyone else near it. He put it in a safe deposit box and ordered it locked up until after his death. Therefore, I have called all of you here tonight to hear his last words.
You mean to hear how much money he left you?
Alison Curtis here is my lawyer. She is here to read the will which she extracted from the safe deposit box this afternoon.
Shouldn't William be down here to hear this?
No, it doesn't matter. With his condition, he wouldn't be able to understand any of it anyway.
I keep hearing this William mentioned. Who is he?
My husband's only nephew. He and his condition are of no consequence to this matter. Shall we begin?
Of course.
It is my final will and
I say, what is all this commotion about?
I presume this is William.
It's so wonderful to meet you. I say, I didn't catch your name.
Burton Everhart III.
Ah, yes, now I remember Burton Everhart. Me and Bert are old friends.
I'm sorry, I don't believe we've met.
Of course, Bert. How could you forget? We graduated top of the class in the academy.
Academy? I'm sure I don't know what you're talking about.
William here was involved in a terrible car accident years ago. He's never been the same since. Split personalities and the like. It's really quite a shame. He was a bright boy.
Jennings, my favorite butler. You did remember to lock up the hounds, didn't you?
Of course, sir.
Good man.
I don't remember seeing any dogs on our way in. That's because we don't own any. Oh.
Allison, please continue.
of course. It is my final will and test.
Actually, Allison, why don't you just skip along to the good part?
The good part. I wasn't aware that there was any good part of a will.
She means the part about the Colonel's money, ma'am.
Oh, I see. All right then, let me find it here. Ah, yes. And therefore, I leave all of my finances and possessions to my lovely wife, Julia.
Just exactly how much was this old man worth?
Let me see. His final funds will equal in excess of £5 million.
I had no idea he was worth that kind of money.
He could have been kind enough to leave a little bit to us, George.
Well, thank you all for attending our little meeting, but it is getting rather late, and I do think we should go our separate ways for the night. Jennings, show the men up to their rooms.
Of course. Follow me, gentlemen.
It really is getting late. I must be on my way. It is rather late, and...
Nonsense, Alison. It's much too late for you to drive home now.
Yes, I think it would be better for you to stay here. Anna will make up a bed for you in the Colonel's study.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much. I really am quite tired. Tomorrow, we can go to the courthouse and finalize everything.
Yes, we shall.
Come along then, we'll get you all set. Not William.
Such a beautiful night. It reminds me of my time serving in the Peloponnesian Wars.
Rather late to be up doing work, isn't it, Miss Curtis?
Oh goodness, Mr. Redmond, you scared me.
I apologize. No harm meant. What are you working on?
Just reviewing some documents. Say, isn't it rather late to be sneaking about the house, scaring people?
I most certainly was not sneaking. I simply came down to get a glass of water and saw you here. May I ask you a question?
I suppose so.
According to the Colonel's will, what would happen if, say, his dear wife were to pass away before collecting her husband's fortune? Would the money go to someone else?
Mr. Redmond, that is a horrible thing to ask. But if you must know, Colonel Straightfoot did think about that before he died. His will stipulates that the money will go to someone else if his wife passes away within 72 hours of his own death.
Of course. He always was a smart man. I wonder who he chose.
Mr. Redmond, please don't waste your time. I will not show you the will.
What would it hurt? One little peek, just to satisfy my curiosity.
Even if I wanted to, I couldn't show you. The will is locked inside this briefcase. Julie and I have business to attend to at the courthouse before the will goes into effect.
But don't you have the key?
Julia insisted on keeping the key herself. I will not have access to it until tomorrow morning.
Locked inside that briefcase there, eh?
George, what are you doing down here at this time of night?
Dear, I was only getting a glass of water.
Well, I believe you took a wrong turn. Come now, it's terribly late.
Of course, my dear.
Oh, good evening, Miss Curtis. I see you have an extra piece of baggage there. I'll just take that to the study.
Oh, no, Jennings. I need that briefcase. Leave it here.
Are you sure, ma'am? You don't appear to be using it.
Jennings, I said leave it here.
Of course, ma'am.
Oh, goodness. When did that get there? Oh, good evening, Alison. Julia lent me her letter opener. I just finished using it and thought she might want it back.
And you felt it important to return it to her this hour of night?
Well, that midnight express. You never know when the mail is going to come through. Well then, I'll just be returning this then.
Oh, Ava, may I borrow that for a moment?
Yes, of course. Here you are.
And don't worry about returning it. I can put it away when I'm finished.
Yes, of course. Thank you. Well then, good night.
Did I forget something? Oh, whatever.
Are you sure about this, George?
Of course I am. Now stay quiet, or you'll get us caught.
But it just doesn't feel right breaking into someone else's briefcase.
Well, do you want to know whose name is on that will, or don't you?
Of course, but...
Don't worry, dear. It's quite late. The entire house is sound asleep by now. Here it is. It shouldn't be hard to pick the lock. Almost had it.
Hurry up, George.
Mr. and Mrs. Redmond, I thought you two had gone to bed for the night.
No, no, we didn't.
Well, I only came back for the letter opener.
Here it is. Now you can open all the letters you like. Good night.
I get so forgetful at times. I hope I'm not forgetting anything else.
I'm sure you haven't. Good night, Miss Curtis.
Good night.
She's gone. Open it up.
Patience, woman. I have to unlock it first.
Give it to me.
Oh,
Come on, give it.
I've got it. Come on.
So, you've taken to rummaging through other people's personal property, have you?
I would never.
Of course not. We were only checking for the brand name.
Oh, yes, George has the most awful trouble finding a good briefcase. They just don't make them as good as they used to.
Well, I'm sure Miss Curtis would be happy to tell you all about it in the morning. If you want to look inside it so badly, perhaps you should ask her for the key.
The key, yes. Perhaps that would be the best way.
We'll worry about that later, George. Well, we must be heading back to bed. Thank you for the advice, Jennings.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Advice? What kind of advice did you give them, Jenny?
I'm really not sure. Are you running errands at this time of night?
Unfortunately, yes. She forgot her reading glasses.
Reading? This late? It's quite unusual for Mrs. Strayford.
Oh, she's not reading. She had a slight inclination that she may want to read in the morning and wanted to be sure her glasses were in the right place. I swear, that woman will be the death of me yet.
Perhaps it will be the other way around.
What?
If Mrs. Strayford were to, pardon the expression, kick the bucket, the Colonel's fortune would be up in the air.
Really? Even so, I wouldn't count on that happening. That woman is too stubborn to die. It'll take more than old age, that's for sure.
Perhaps she may need a little persuasion.
Jennings, are you suggesting?
The Colonel is worth a lot of money, Anna. Perhaps we should discuss this further on the way to Mrs. Stratford's room.
Yes, of course.
And what exactly are you going to discuss, Jennings, old boy?
Master William, I didn't hear you come in.
I overheard you mention the Colonel's money.
It was nothing important, William. It was only mentioned in passing.
It is of the utmost importance.
Really, William, there's nothing.
Master William, it would be best if we didn't tell you. The Colonel had wished it to be a surprise for you.
I must say, William, you were right. The Colonel's library is enormous. But I limited myself to one book, the Jungle Book. Self-control, you know. What's going on over here?
Oh, Jennings here was just about to tell me about a big surprise the Colonel had been storing up.
Really now, I don't
Come
think...
now, Jennings. We all love a good surprise.
Yes, really. I would love to know.
Well, all right. The Colonel was planning on investing in a petting zoo.
A petting zoo?
Yes, he felt it would be a good way for you to start a business.
With small animals?
Yes, small animals and a few larger ones as well.
Splendid! I always wanted a petting zoo. I remember when I was
Master
young.
William, if you'll excuse us, we have a matter to attend to. Thank you, sir. Good night, Mr. Callahan.
Yes, good night to you too.
What was that all about, Winston?
Oh, quite fascinating, Burton. The Colonel was telling Jennings how he was planning on giving William a petting zoo.
Llamas over here, sheeps, ducks, quack, quack, bag.
It appears that he is already taking inventory.
Oh, come sit down. We have plans to make.
I must say, Burton, you were right about Jennings. He was awake even at this awful hour.
Yes, but so were Anna and William, for that matter.
They must sleep too much during the day. It really disrupts the nervous system, you know.
Naturally. I don't like the sound of that! Winston, go and find out what's happened.
Oh, it's terrible! Dreadful!
What's going on, Mrs. Thornton?
I don't know. It's Julia. She's dead. She fell out of a window.
It's not a pretty sight.
What a terrible accident!
In this situation, I fear an accident is highly unlikely. Winston, go and get my bag. All right. Tell me exactly what happened, Mrs. Thornton.
I don't know. I went to Julia's room to check on her, and I found the window open, and...
And all right. Did you see anyone else in the room?
No, not at all.
Thank you, Winston. I believe it would be best if we checked on the scene. Mrs. Thornton, if you would please show us to Mrs. Stratford's room.
Of course.
Poor Julia, darling.
Burton, I'm starving.
You're always starving, Winston.
Think there's food in the kitchen?
I do believe I remember seeing some food in the kitchen. I'd kill for one of those biscuits.
Speaking of kill, Burton, murder just seems to follow us around, doesn't it?
We're detectives, Winston. It's our job to follow murder around.
Oh, of course. Well, which one do we solve first?
In good time. Perhaps one will lead to the other.
Huh. Maybe. Incredible insight, Burton, really.
Yes. But it will take much more of that insight to track this murderer down.
Sir, everyone has been informed of your request.
Wonderful. You do realize that request applies to you as well, Jennings?
Of course, sir.
Thank you, Jennings. If you would please call Miss Ava Thornton to come and speak with us.
Sir.
What request is he talking about?
Oh, I had Jennings gather the house and tell them that they are not to leave the premises unless I give permission. There is a murderer amongst us, and we do not want the culprit to slip away.
Capital idea. So now the questioning begins.
Indeed. Take notes for me, Winston, would you?
Right. On I'll not miss a single detail.
We'll see. Ah, Mrs. Thornton, please sit down. I have a few questions to ask you. You were good friends with Mrs. Stratford, correct?
Yes, Julia and I have been close for many years.
And how did she get along with her husband?
Oh, they were no worse off than any other old married couple. They had their quarrels, mainly about money, but nothing too serious.
Nothing that could drive Mrs. Stratford to do something drastic?
Mr. Everhart, if you are inquiring as to whether Julia would kill her husband, the answer is no. It's no secret they fought over his money, but she was not capable of something as horrible as murder.
They fought over his money.
Yes, she felt that he made terrible business decisions, and I can't say I blame her either.
Why not?
He never put his money in the right place. He once invested over £500,000 in a tropical bird shop.
Well, I don't see anything wrong with that.
But there isn't a jungle within 1,000 miles of here. Needless to say, he got what he deserved. The shop went bankrupt rather quickly.
Of course. Now then, what about last night?
I already told you what happened. I don't see the need to repeat myself.
Give me all the details. What were you doing up that late?
I went in to check on Julia. She said she hadn't slept well the past few nights, and I wanted to be sure she was all right.
You were coming from your room, then?
Yes, of course.
And you didn't see anyone?
Come to think of it, I did pass Jennings in the hallway.
And what was he doing?
He said he was checking the windows to make sure they were all locked.
Well, it appears he missed at least one.
Mr. Callahan, please!
I know.
That was utterly uncalled for.
I know. I'm sorry. I just couldn't resist.
The story of his life. Did you see or talk to anyone else?
No, that was it. After I found Julia's body, I came directly here.
All right. Well, that will be all, Mrs. Thornton. Remember, you're not to leave the house.
Yes, that is most irritating, Mr. Everhart. My husband has a rather important meeting at the university today, and I had wished to accompany him.
Now, that's a devoted wife. What is the meeting about?
My husband's department. They're not convinced it's important enough for school's funding. His tenure is at stake.
Yes, well, I'm sorry for the inconvenience, but this is of the utmost importance.
It's odd, isn't it, that Jennings was checking to make sure the windows were locked and Mrs. Stratford fell out of one?
Yes, most peculiar. Let me see your notes, Winston. Winston, I thought you were going to catch every detail possible.
I did, Burton. I was listening very closely.
All you have written here are the words tropical birds.
Turn the page over, Burton. There's more.
Oh, good. For a second there, I thought that... Winston, I'm not quite sure how a list of your favourite birds is going to help in this investigation.
I'm sorry, Burton, but the mention of a tropical bird shop got me
You are
thinking...
utterly hopeless, my friend.
It could turn out to be useful information.
Unless the murderer turns out to be a scarlet macaw, I really don't think it will be that crucial.
Oh, good morning, gentlemen. I hope I'm not interrupting anything, but I think I may have left my briefcase down here last night.
Oh, that must be sitting beside the couch there.
Ah, so it is. Thank you.
Must not have been very important to have left it overnight like that.
It actually is very important. I have a rather embarrassing memory. Forget things all the time.
Naturally. That briefcase, it contains the Colonel's will, does it not?
Yes. How did you know?
I recognized it from last night. It could be dangerous to leave something like that lying around where others could get their hands on it.
It's funny you should mention that, Mr. Everhart. Last night, I was up late working and had a rather disturbing experience.
Please, tell me exactly what transpired.
Well, I was sitting here looking over some documents when Mr. Redmond passed through the room. He said he was getting a drink of water.
Oh, yes, that is a rather disturbing experience.
Anyway, he started asking questions about the will and what would happen if Julia were to die.
Really? That is quite odd.
He wanted to know who would get the money in the event that she were to die.
And what did you tell him?
I told him that the colonel had designated another heir if Julia didn't survive him by at least 72 hours. But I didn't tell him who.
But you know who it is.
In fact, no. I didn't have time to review the will before last night. And now it is locked inside this briefcase. Julia insisted on keeping the key herself.
So, if anyone wanted to see the will, you would have to get the key from her?
I'm sure that was the idea, Winston. But unfortunately for Mrs. Stratford, it seems she must have underestimated the rest of this house.
What do you mean, Mr. Everhart?
Keeping the key in her possession was just asking for trouble. Mrs. Stratford clearly knew she was not favoured among those of this household, but she must not have expected that any of them was capable of murder.
Oh, I'm sure she didn't. From the way she used to speak about her family, I'm surprised they're capable of anything at all.
She didn't speak well of her family.
Very rarely. She often compared them to a clan of wild cavemen, lost in the wrong time period.
No, I read a book about that once. Oh, it was rather quite fascinating.
Did you have any other run-ins during the night?
Nothing of importance. I went to bed shortly after that incident.
I see. Well, that will be all, Miss Curtis.
I hope it was of help.
Quite intriguing. The list of suspects is growing by the minute. Let me see those notes again, Winston.
Yes.
I think I'd be better off with those cavemen. They'd surely take better notes than you.
I'm sorry, but I'm trying. It's really hard to stay focused.
Of course it is. Tell you what, why don't you try to form those notes into some semblance of logic while I go fetch Mr. Redmond? I think we should hear his side of the story.
Capital idea. Say, Burton, do you mind if I assist in the interrogation?
You are assisting, Winston. Taking notes is very important.
I mean, real detective work. I want to ask some questions.
Questioning is a tricky subject. There's an art to it.
Come on, I can do it. I won't do anything foolish, I promise.
All right, just a few simple questions.
Perfect. I'll start with them right away.
Should have left him in India.
All right, Winston, think of some questions. Where were you when James was in the hallway?
I love the smell of gunpowder in the morning.
Pardon? Oh, good morning, William.
May I ask who you are and what you are doing in my home?
Don't be silly, William. It's me, Winston. I'm here to solve the murders.
Ah, well then, good morning. It's quite a shame, isn't it? I told her to put bars over those windows. Keeps the pigeons out, you know. She was always rather clumsy, I suppose.
I hate to have to inform you, William, but I don't think Mrs. Stratford's fall was an accident.
Well, what else would it be?
Murder.
Oh, really now? That's preposterous.
It's not really that far-fetched.
Well, it certainly wasn't me. I was out here.
Yes, that's right. You were planning your petting zoo.
My what? Petting zoo? I don't follow.
Last night, the Colonel Jennings was telling you how the Colonel was planning on giving you a petting zoo.
A petting zoo? I would never approve that. All those dirty animals biting and scratching. You must be mistaken.
Oh, no. I remember it clearly. You were very excited.
Good morning, William.
Ah, so wonderful to meet you. I don't believe we've met.
It takes a while for all his personalities become acquainted with you. William, this is Burton Everhart III.
Ah, pleased to meet you.
Likewise. Mr. Redmond, if you would please have a seat. I would like to question you in private. William, if you would please excuse yourself.
But it wasn't me. Oh, you mean excuse myself as in leave the room? Well, I don't see any reason why I should.
William, there's an urgent call for you in the study over there.
Oh, well, that must be the Emperor. If you'll excuse me, gentlemen.
In the study, William. William.
Well done, Winston. That was quite brilliant. It reminds me of something I would do.
It was nothing really. Well, it was something, wasn't it?
Quite. I wish I had thought of that years ago. It would have saved me a lot of grief.
Grief?
Oh, nothing much, I suppose. William can become long-winded at times. Such nonsensical stories. I feel so badly for him. He doesn't remember much at all from one day to the next.
Yes, William is quite an interesting character, isn't he? Are any of his personalities violent?
Violent?
Yes, say violent enough to commit a crime.
Oh, heavens, no. I do hope you're not trying to pin this murder on William. He's certainly not capable of that.
Not capable of much of anything, it appears. Sorry.
I'm not trying to rule out anyone just yet. Speaking of which, I have a few questions for you, sir.
Like what?
Like, what did you do last night after the meeting?
I did nothing out of the ordinary. Karen and I got ready for bed. I came down once for a glass of water and...
Oh, why don't you just cut to the part where you killed Mrs. Stratford to get the key to the briefcase?
What? I did nothing of the sort. I don't even know what you're talking about. Key? Briefcase?
Not so fast, George. We've already talked to Miss Curtis. She told us all about the will being locked inside the briefcase and her late night encounter with you.
Fine. So I asked her a question or two. Nothing out of the ordinary. It was only curiosity anyhow. Besides, Karen and I had already gone back to bed before the murder even took place.
Nothing out of the ordinary? Fine. I see. You may go, Mr. Redmond.
But Burton, I've got a
All
few...
right.
Burton, what are you doing? We've caught him. He's obviously got something to hide. Why did you let him go?
He may have something to hide, but we'll see what his wife has to say.
Well, you've blown any chances of getting anything from her. He's going to go straight back to his room, and they're going to plan out their story.
Sorry to keep you waiting out in the hallway, Mrs. Redmond, but I had a bit of business to take care of.
She was waiting in the hallway the entire time? Burton, you sly dog.
If you would please take a seat, Mrs. Redmond. I have a few questions to ask you. What were you doing last night around the time of the murder?
George and I were just getting settled into bed when we heard the scream.
I see. And did you make any trips downstairs during the night?
Yes, I went downstairs twice. The first time was to find George.
And did you
Did I what?
find him?
Oh yes, he was in this room talking to Miss Curtis.
What were they talking about?
Oh, I really didn't hear anything.
All right. What about the second time?
George got sidetracked on his way to the kitchen on his first trip, so he went back down for a glass of water.
You went with him to get a glass of water?
He's rather hopeless around the kitchen.
Of course. And you didn't see Miss Curtis again that night?
Well, we did bump into her on our way back upstairs, yes.
I see. Well, that will be all, Mrs. Redmond. You may go. Thank you for cooperating.
Of course.
She lied! Miss Curtis said she only saw Mr. Redmond once, and Mrs. Redmond nuts!
That's not a word, Winston. Besides, Mr. Redmond only claimed one meeting with the barrister. So therefore, you're right. One of the happy couple isn't telling us the whole story.
Maybe George Redmond killed Mrs. Stratford, and his wife doesn't know about it.
It's possible, but I highly doubt it. Either one of them is trying to throw us off the track, or else Miss Curtis isn't the only one with a bad memory.
Will there be anything else, sir?
Yes, just a few questions, Jennings. You've had quite a long day. Why don't you sit down and relax? Go ahead. How long have you worked for this house, Jennings?
18 years, sir.
And you liked the Colonel and his wife?
I like the Colonel. I could have done without his wife, though.
I see. She wasn't a pleasant employer.
She was dreadful, domineering, overbearing, and utterly rude. In 18 years, I can't remember receiving a single compliment from her. Sadly enough, the house has become peaceful again since last night.
How much did she pay you for your services?
Not nearly enough. Certainly less than what she could afford.
So do you always check the windows at night?
Pardon?
Check the windows to make sure they're locked.
Oh, yes, of course. It's a preventative measure to stop anyone from coming in.
Too bad it couldn't stop anyone from coming out.
What was that?
Oh, nothing. I think it's a great idea.
And did you check Mrs. Stratford's window that night?
Oh, no. Once she retires for the night, I am strictly forbidden. Anna is in charge of her then. She sleeps in Mrs. Stratford's sitting room, you know?
Really?
Poor thing.
Yes, my thoughts exactly. Mrs. Stratford wanted her nearby in case of emergencies.
So did you see Anna outside her room during the night?
Only once. She came out to fetch Mrs. Stratford's reading glasses. She doesn't take to venturing out into the dark unless it's absolutely necessary.
Well, isn't that just adorable?
Do you have any more questions for me?
No, that will be all, Jennings. Thank you for your time.
Of course, sir.
Well, I guess we can shorten the list of suspects now.
What makes you say that?
We saw Anna and Jennings once last night while we were with William. Jennings said that's the only time she came out. So, the killer must have snuck inside while she was gone, and William was down here when Mrs. Thornton came.
Why didn't Anna find the body?
What?
Would you like some tea, sir?
No, thank you, Anna. Why don't you sit down? We need to talk.
Sir, I have a lot of cleaning.
Come, it won't take long. So does it take you a rather long time to do your cleaning, Anna?
A long time, sir?
On account of your lame arm.
Lame arm, sir?
You didn't drop that turkey earlier out of frustration, did you? You dropped it because it was too heavy for you to carry.
Oh, please, sir. How am I ever to find employment as a maid if everyone knows?
Mrs. Stratford wasn't very tolerant of physical impairment, was she?
If you'll forgive me, sir, Mrs. Stratford wasn't very tolerant, period.
I understand.
Don't worry, Anna. I'll see that you're taken very good care of.
I'm very grateful. May I go now?
One more thing. How long were you with Jennings before you heard Mrs. Thornton scream?
I don't know precisely, but it must have been some time. I walked with him as he checked the windows in the hall upstairs, and there are quite a few windows. Will that be all?
Yes, you may go. Anna confirmed Jennings' story, which means that it couldn't be our young maid, no matter how much she did dislike her employer.
Not that I ever suspected her myself, but how do you know for certain?
Why don't you go and fetch Mrs. Thornton? I'll explain it all later.
Okay.
There was only one scream heard last night, that of Mrs. Thornton's. That means that Julia Stratford didn't scream while being pushed out a window. The only sort of person who doesn't scream while being pushed out a window is one that is already dead. Anna clearly did not have the physical strength to kill Mrs. Stratford, pick her up and shove her out a window. No, our murderer is certainly a good deal more robust.
She wasn't very far off, Burton.
Let go of me. I was just in the library reading. Do you have another question, Mr. Everhart?
Yes, this is very important. You said you saw Jennings in the hallway. Did you see anyone else with him?
No, not that I can remember.
You didn't see anyone at all?
I already told you, there was no one there. Jennings came rushing in after I screamed, but that was all.
And you didn't see Anna at all during any of this?
Oh, I suppose she was with Jennings last night, coming down the hall towards Julia's room.
Well, thank you, Mrs. Thornton. You may go.
Well then, we know it wasn't Anna. I knew that beautiful creature was not capable of murder.
I wouldn't be so happy, Winston. It makes our job much more difficult.
Why don't we focus on another murder, Burton? I find that when I'm stumped by something, it's best to leave it alone for a while.
Yes, perhaps that is best. So then, killing the Colonel would have been easy enough. A simple drug could simulate a heart attack, and anyone in the house could have administered it. The real question is, who had the greatest motive?
Julia Stratford, of course. She knew she would get a whole lot of money out of her husband's death.
Yes, but she was going to get that money sooner or later anyway. Why rush things at such a high risk?
What about the servants?
They all liked the Colonel enough, certainly more than his wife. I doubt they would bring that upon themselves.
So that leaves Ava Thornton. She always said she didn't like the way the Colonel handled his money. Maybe she wanted to help her friend out.
Or perhaps she needed money for her husband's department. She said herself it's in financial trouble, but if she could fund it herself...
Julia Strayford would have given her the money. That's it, Burton, you've done it.
Ah, but we still have one more murder yet to solve.
Ah, hello, Betty. How goes it?
Things are looking up, William.
Marvelous.
Say, William, what are you doing here? Do you have something to tell us?
Oh, no. I just came down here to stretch my legs, you know. I've been reading all morning.
Oh, reading what?
The Jungle Book. It really is a good book, isn't it, Winston? A good book to limit yourself to, if you must limit yourself, I must say.
Yes, it is.
William, as much as I value your literary reviews, I must ask you to leave. You're so distracting, and we need to concentrate.
Ah, of course. I understand. I often get the same way. Well then, ta-ta for now.
William?
Oh, and William,
Yes, sir.
one more thing. Remember, don't leave the grounds, eh?
Of course, sir.
The Jungle Book. That's the book you were reading, correct?
Yes, but don't let yourself become distracted by a book, Burton. We've got a murder to solve.
Yes, of course.
As we were saying, Ava Thornton might have killed Julia Strayford if she wouldn't have given her the money. Or maybe Mrs. Strayford actually found out that Miss Thornton killed the Colonel, hoping to increase her chances on getting the money. What do you think?
Yes, there's motive there.
So that's it then. We've done it. Mrs. Thornton killed the Colonel and his wife to help fund her husband's department.
Like a true detective, Winston.
I knew I could do it. Shall we call a meeting and reveal the murderer's identity?
Yes. Call Jennings and tell him to gather the house together. Make sure Miss Alison Curtis brings the will. Then phone Scotland Yard and have them send one of their men down right away.
I'm on it. We've got our murderer.
That we do, Winston. That we do. Now that everyone is here, I should like to inform you that there is a murderer in this room. I have called this meeting to reveal that murderer's identity to you.
Drat. I thought perhaps this was a meeting about the Colonel's will.
There's probably a connection between them.
Yes, I'm sure there probably is.
Winston is quite right, for once. I'm prepared to say that the name on that will matches that of our murderer.
But how does...
Winston, the will, please. It's all part of my work, madam. If you would do the honor, please read aloud the name on that will.
Julia?
No, the name after that, as you were telling me earlier.
Oh, sorry. William?
But I thought I say, the Colonel was nice enough to put me in his will. I always thought I liked that old man.
Surely you're joking, Mr. Everhart. He doesn't even understand what's going on.
Man, all that money. Perhaps we could buy that island, George, like we always wanted to.
Really, Burton, I'm not quite sure I follow your logic.
It wouldn't be the first time. William, you were doing quite well, up until this morning.
Whatever are you talking about?
The Jungle Book. George, you said so yourself. William remembers very little from day to day. So why would he remember the details of an insignificant conversation with Winston, yet not even remember his name?
That is a good book. I'll have to read it sometime.
Now drop the act, William. You're not fooling anybody. But I must say, you do need some acting lessons.
My word, Burton. I never thought a gentleman such as you could be so utterly rude. And wrong, I might add. Quack, quack. Fine, I admit it. It was an act, but I did not kill the Colonel.
You're quite right there. No, the Colonel died from natural causes. But, once he was out of the way, you knew you wouldn't get a penny out of Julia Strayford.
So you admit to killing Julia Strayford?
I admit nothing of the sort. All I said is it stands to reason I was part of the will.
But only as a secondary beneficiary if Mrs. Straightford were to die directly after the Colonel. Otherwise, you didn't stand to get a thing.
She was in your way, wasn't she, William?
That doesn't prove anything. It was nothing new. She was always in my way.
You beast!
And you too, Ava. You and Julia were always trying to convince the Colonel not to fund my beautiful projects.
Projects? What projects, William?
Would you be talking about scarlet mackerels, William?
Aha! I told you that would be useful information.
You were behind the tropical bird shop?
What? No, of course not.
It's too late, William. We're on to you. You had been bleeding the Colonel dry for years. He thought he was investing in small businesses in town, when in reality, the money was going directly into your pocket. Poor old man never had any idea. But once he was dead, you knew you wouldn't be able to manipulate Julia Straightford so easily, would you? So you had to get her out of the way.
How did you do it, William? You were with me most of the night.
I have reconstructed that night in my mind. May I?
By all means, Inspector Genius, tell the people your fancy theory.
William showed me and Winston to the library. From there, he slipped into Mrs. Straightford's room, killed her, then shoved her out the window. He made sure to leave everything as it was, so that when the body was found, he would be down here with us.
But Anna always slept in that room. Wouldn't she have seen him?
It's all in the notes, Mr. Redmond. All in the notes. Anna was with Jennings when they were checking the windows.
Bravo, Burton. Honestly, bravo. This all works out very nicely on paper. It must have been very difficult to narrow it down to me when practically everyone in this room already had the motive. Too bad it won't do you any good. I perfected this act, and no one will believe any of you.
Not so fast, William. I hope you don't mind. I showed myself in.
Please, please, all in a day's work.
Do you have any statement you wish to make before I take you in? Well then, should we all celebrate in the kitchen?
Yeah, an idea.
Does that mean we get the money?
I do hope so.